This is CBC Vancouver News.
Yeah, I'm glad everyone came together and willing to lend a hand and haul some water and do whatever we needed to do, yeah.
Thousands of people in Cranbrook can once again drink water from their taps after a days-long boil water advisory is lifted. Also, several egg products and a brand of small pastries are being recalled over concerns about possible salmonella contamination. Plus,
and we have many women, we have over 1,400 women on our wait list at YWCA for our permanent housing.
The province has declared gender-based violence an epidemic, a move being welcomed by advocates who say now is time for meaningful action. Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. The city of Cranbrook has lifted a boil water advisory that impacted around 20,000 residents. As Corey Bullock reports, the city says the notice was issued after a maintenance mishap affected the water supply, but the cause is still not known.
The boil water notice for the city of Cranbrook was lifted Saturday afternoon, and residents are once again free to drink from the tap. But the city says it's still working to get to the root cause of the issue.
So we're not entirely sure exactly what caused the low chlorine, the high chlorine event followed by low chlorine event.
Thursday morning, residents woke to the news. Businesses were advised to follow Interior Health drinking water guidelines. Some were forced to close, while others pivoted to boiled and bottled H2O, and water started to quickly disappear from grocery store shelves. But the community came together to make sure there was safe water for people to drink. In this co-working space, members donated water coolers, jugs, and spent time boiling water to bring in.
You know, you have to be at work, right? And water's kind of essential to that. So, yeah, I'm glad everyone came together and willing to lend a hand and haul some water and do whatever we needed to do, yeah.
And this water company has been producing 5-gallon jugs around the clock.
All the way through, we always have water ready to go for exactly these kind of things, right? We'll always make sure that we have clean, safe drinking water here in Cranbrook, for sure.
The city got approval from Interior Health to lift the advisory Saturday after water sample tests confirmed there are no contamination issues. And looking forward, the city says it's undertaking additional measures to further protect and purify the water supply. The city has approved funding for a new UV disinfection treatment plant, which it says will provide additional protection for the public. The project is currently in the design phase, and more updates are expected later this year. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
Certain brands of eggs in BC and other provinces are being recalled due to possible salmonella contamination. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the recall covers Compliments brand, Foremost, Golden Valley Eggs, IGA, No Name, and Western Family Eggs, with expiry dates of February 16th, 22nd, and March 1st of this year. The recall notice says people should not consume, use, or distribute the eggs and are being advised to throw them away or contact the store where they bought them. The agency says food affected with salmonella may not look or smell spoiled, but can still make people sick. Symptoms include fever, headache, vomiting, nausea, stomach cramps, and diarrhea. The infection can be more serious or even deadly for young children, pregnant women, seniors, and those with weakened immune systems. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is also recalling sweet cream mini patisseries over salmonella concerns. It affects products with best before dates between June 17th and November 15th, 2025. Officials say anyone who may have eaten the possibly contaminated patisseries should contact their healthcare provider. Crews have begun demolishing the century-old Hotel Dunsmuir in downtown Vancouver after the city deemed the derelict heritage building a danger to public safety. Pinky Wong reports.
A piece of Vancouver's history will soon be left in pieces. Bystanders bear witness to the destruction of the 115-year-old Dunsmuir house, originally the Hotel Dunsmuir. Admired for its detailed cornice atop the building and its historic brick facade.
It'd be nice to see it like one last time.
I used to live here. It was a hellhole. And the old pipes would leak water into your room, and all kinds of, the power would always go out. There'd be little fires in the walls from the power because the cable got old. I mean, the fact is that there's not much there to preserve anymore.
Built in 1909 at the corner of Dunsmuir and Rich Street, Dunsmuir House has served as a grand hotel, a barracks for soldiers, and a single-room occupancy housing complex. But since 2013, the heritage building stood vacant. The city of Vancouver hoped to salvage parts of the building, but reluctantly ordered its demolition after declaring it a danger to public safety based on its deterioration. City staff said there was a risk of catastrophic cascading collapse. The city says a third-party consultant estimated preserving the building's front would take over a year, which would pose significant safety risk.
So unfortunately, we can't save anything, which is really not a good outcome for this building. It is a building that probably does contain some hazardous building materials. The condition of the building did not allow it to be abated safely. So we're taking precautions. We have air monitoring around, the poly on the fences.
Responding to CBC News, the building owner, Holborn, says it is assuming all costs for the demolition, but did not disclose the amount. The developer says it remains committed to redevelop the location for revitalization that would benefit the community. While the majority of demolition is expected to finish by Monday, the city says it will take 6 to 8 months to clear all the remaining debris on site. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Union for Paramedics and Dispatchers in BC is claiming ambulances are sitting empty because of changes to overtime scheduling.
Historically, what they do is they pre-schedule overtime and other ways of staffing ambulances. And for some reason in January, they decided no longer to pre-schedule in advance and kind of do like a day-by-day thing. And they came up with all sorts of different algorithms and matrices on when they would offer overtime and how and where. And it's turned out to be a pretty significant disaster for ambulance staffing throughout BC.
The union says BC Emergency Health Services made overtime changes to cut costs. It also says there are hundreds of vacancies across the province and that changes are affecting response times. BC EHS says it can dispatch ambulances from surrounding areas if ambulances are out of service. It also says it uses a variety of means to fill shifts and says overtime was used throughout this week. The BC government has declared gender-based violence an epidemic, a move advocates have been calling for years. They say it's a critical step forward and now immediate action is needed to address the alarming rate of gender-based violence in BC communities. And a warning, some of the content in this next story may be disturbing for some viewers.
It's an important acknowledgement because we absolutely have to recognize what we've been seeing on the ground.
Angela Marie McDougall with Vancouver's Battered Women's Support Services says gender-based violence is pervasive in BC, with femicides in this province reaching critical levels.
We've had an escalation in intimate partner violence reports since 2019. And we've certainly had an extension of that is the killings, the femicide of women. And we've seen more killings all across Canada, but certainly in British Columbia.
The Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability says a woman or girl is killed by gender-motivated violence every 48 hours in Canada. And according to StatsCan in BC, nearly 1 in 2 women has experienced some form of intimate partner violence since the age of 15.
We meet women and gender diverse folks all the time who say they're not reporting it. And some of that also relates to victim services. And that's why more supports to believe victims, to provide a safe environment for reporting and follow-up, to provide medical care that's responsive and trauma-informed is really key.
Premier David Eby's directive to Brenda Bailey, BC's finance minister, outlines 2 key mandates to make sure the justice system meets the needs of survivors and more transition housing is available for women fleeing violence.
Not only transitional housing, but it's important that long-term housing for women and 2S LGBTQI plus folks is considered. And we have many women, we have over 1,400 women on our wait list at YWCA for our permanent housing, our long-term housing.
McDougall says gender-based violence is a public safety crisis.
Right now, most of the services for women in British Columbia are funded through the Public Safety and Solicitor General Ministry. And the absence of gender-based violence in that mandate letter is quite concerning to us.
BC's Parliamentary Secretary of Gender Equity says she will work with Indigenous partners, community service providers, and an advisory committee to ensure survivors have the support they need. These advocates want to see bolder action like coroner's inquests into deaths resulting from gender-based violence and better data on gender-related killings. The BC SPCA worries the suspension of Parliament could affect animal welfare legislation.
We do need the continued ongoing support of British Columbians and Canadians to tell politicians, to sign petitions, to write letters and send emails and let politicians know that these issues matter to British Columbians and to Canadians.
Several bills were on the table before Parliament was suspended. One proposed including violence against pets as a form of coercive control in cases of intimate partner violence, and another proposed to end the live export of horses by air for slaughter overseas. These bills have now been terminated or paused until the new session. Parliament is scheduled to return on March 24th. App-based delivery and ride-hailing workers are calling on the province to review its distracted driving laws after the BC Supreme Court ruled a single touch of a phone to accept an order while driving is illegal. So Rab Sandhu reports.
A single tap of the phone screen like this cost an Uber Eats delivery driver nearly $300. After a BC Supreme Court judge ruled touching a device once while driving is only allowed in certain circumstances, like answering a call, and not for operating an app. The verdict came after the Crown challenged an earlier acquittal by the Traffic Court, which the BC Supreme Court reversed last month.
The legislation is written in a very clear way. It only permits one touch for the purposes of initiating, accepting, or ending a call, and for no other reason. Otherwise, there is a blanket prohibition on using your device while driving.
Kuljit Singh, who works for Uber and Uber Eats, thinks the judgment is unfair.
We are losing money if we don't accept. And if we accept, then we get late tickets.
Singh says the current law makes it challenging for drivers who depend on their phones for their livelihood.
Our job is on the phone, so that's the biggest deal.
The Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General acknowledges the use of commercial apps was not as common when the laws were last updated. But they say they continue to monitor advances in technology and court decisions related to distracted driving to determine if current legislation needs to be updated. Last year, the province introduced new employment standards for app-based gig workers. Critics say the province is contradicting itself.
The government, on the one hand, keeps saying that they're trying to create legislation to make it easier for gig economy workers to earn a living, to try and make their working conditions more fair, while at the same time funding appeals of decisions that make it more difficult to actually engage with the employment that they've chosen to have.
Uber says it requires all users of its apps to follow the law. But Singh says with about 46,000 ride-hailing and delivery workers in BC, legislation needs to keep up with the times. Sohrab Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Youth unemployment is on the rise across the country, including here in BC. And as Michelle Morton tells us, new data from StatsCan is painting a bleak picture for young job hunters.
UBC student Cassandra Agolino says while she has a full-year scholarship and some savings, it's not enough to pay the bills.
I do have like extra money like saved up, but it got really bad. I did have to move back home.
Agolino says she's been on the job hunt since last July and had a brief financial break after landing a seasonal job at the PNE. But after handing out roughly 120 resumes online and in person, she still has not been hired for a permanent job.
A lot of the times they just told me to apply like on the website or on Indeed, and I just like never really got anything back.
Agolino is not the only young person struggling to find work. Statistics Canada says last year, the youth employment rate fell by 2.5 percentage points, continuing a downward trend that began in 2023. And by last month, the employment rate was 4.4 percentage points lower than its pre-pandemic average. The BC government says the province's unemployment rate for youth was up 4.5 percentage points in December compared to the same time the year before.
The majority of youth who are unemployed right now were previously in school.
Well, like a lot of employers do want like experience and stuff, but it's really hard to get experience if you're not, if you haven't really worked for that long.
One recruiting expert says there are a few different ways to stand out when applying for work, besides tailoring your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn for the job you want. And that includes networking.
You're leveraging different association, maybe your alumni group from your school, and even your volunteering experience to create new networks that you can, again, network both online through LinkedIn or offline at different events that may be able to get you introductions.
Agolino says while she doesn't know what's next for her in the job hunt, for now, she's focusing on finishing her degree. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A bit of news about us now. The CBC is expanding its local and regional news coverage across the country, adding up to 25 journalists in more than a dozen underserved communities. Canadian publishers are set to get $100 million a year for the next 5 years from Google, which will be paying Canadian news outlets for their using of their content. The CBC is set to get 7% of that. 8 of those journalists will be based here in BC, covering areas like the Fraser Valley, the North Island, the Interior East, the Peace Region, Penticton, and the Sea to Sky. 15 months of fighting in Gaza is set to pause Sunday when a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas takes effect. But the Prime Minister of Israel is warning the cessation of hostilities is only temporary. Stay with us. It's just hours to go before the ceasefire and hostage deal begins. The agreement sees a pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas and leads to a phased release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. But there are last-minute complications. CBC's Peter Armstrong has the latest.
On the eve of a ceasefire, Israel continues to pound targets inside the Gaza Strip. Palestinian officials say 116 people have been killed since the ceasefire was agreed to on Wednesday, and tonight, a new obstacle. Israel's prime minister says the ceasefire won't go forward unless Hamas makes good on a promise to release the names of the hostages to be released. Netanyahu also said Israel reserves the right to resume the war if and when negotiations in the second round prove fruitless. In the meantime, Israel will not draw down its troop deployments during the ceasefire. To the contrary, he says the number of forces along the Philadelphia corridor between Gaza and Egypt will be increased. The latest unraveling comes as President Donald Trump prepares to take office in Washington. Teams from the administrations of both incoming President Trump and outgoing President Joe Biden worked together to get the ceasefire deal across the finish line.
This deal was developed and negotiated under my administration, but its terms will be implemented, for the most part, by the next administration.
Trump wanted the deal done and the hostages returned before he took the oath of office on Monday. In a social media post before the deal was officially announced, he said, "This epic ceasefire agreement could only have happened as a result of our historic victory in November." Under the agreement, 3 hostages were supposed to be released on Sunday. Another 30 hostages held by Hamas would be released over the following 6 weeks. In exchange, Israel would halt its military operations in Gaza and release an undisclosed number of Palestinian prisoners.
How long we have waited for this very moment.
After 15 months of war, the wait for this moment has been grueling.
But we caution, even now, extremist elements in the government are attempting to prevent the full implementation of this deal. They want the fighting to resume, even at the cost of the lives of the hostages who remain behind.
Tonight, President-elect Trump told NBC News that the ceasefire will hold if, in his words, they respect us. If they don't respect us, he says, all hell will break out. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Washington.
Here we have a live shot of Georgia Street in downtown Vancouver tonight. I'll have your full forecast coming up next. It is time now to take a look at our forecast. Let's begin with a quick peek at current temperatures around the province tonight. Starting in Fort St. John, -18 overnight, and in Kamloops, -7. Similar conditions in Kelowna. Clear skies all around, but a bit chillier in -1 in Victoria overnight. Heading into tomorrow, those temperatures are going to stay relatively cool, -17 and sunny in Fort St. John, -10 in Prince George, and an expected 0 in Kamloops. Over on the island, Tofino and Victoria, similar conditions with a high of 5 and 6 for tomorrow. And in Metro Vancouver, we are going to see a possibility of some scattered showers throughout tomorrow with a mix of sun and clouds and a high of 5. Heading into Monday, the temperatures will dip ever so slightly, and we're expecting more around that 2-degree mark with, again, a mix of sun and clouds, but hopefully that rain will disappear. Visitors to the Chinatown Storytelling Center are preparing for the Lunar New Year by repurposing red envelopes to decorate vibrant decorations.
So today it's Family Saturdays. We have this every third Saturday of the month, and this one is specifically for Lunar New Year. We're doing a Taste of Chinatown sort of activation. It's a month-long event, and this one, today we are doing a bunch of Lunar New Year's crafts. So we're making fans, we're making little fishies, we're making little lanterns, and it's just in anticipation for our Lunar New Year.
This year marks the year of the snake. These decorations are believed to bring prosperity and good fortune into their homes. That is your late news for this Saturday. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. For news on the go at any hour, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. We'll see you tomorrow.